Des Romano threw his arm over the back of my stool. Des, short for Desmond, had dark black hair, even though he was surely a few years past 40, and it curled in pleasing twists, like ribbons of ink around his face. The somewhat thick bridge of his nose was the only coarse thing on Des Romano's face, and he managed to make that look spectacularly handsome. He was so confident, so lit up with energy that you began to think every man should have such a face. The story I'd been told by John Mayburn, the private investigator I moonlighted for, was that Des had been named by his mother after a Catholic cardinal, whom she admired. The religious connotation hadn't helped. Des was now the head of his family business, as in the family business. Des was, as Mayburn had said, the new face of Chicago's organized crime. Des smiled at me now. I thought a smile by such a man would be flashy, a surface grin that easily revealed danger underneath. But it was genuine. Or at least it appeared so. I'd been told that in some ways, Des was the new kind of mafia, the kind who had friends from all walks of life around the city, who opted, when possible, for courting rather than strong-arming, who made large donations to charities not because he or his family business wanted something from them, but simply because every respectable business did so. I returned Des's smile, thinking that the problem with Des wasn't his looks, and it wasn't that he lacked generosity, whether toward a woman like me, whom he'd met at the bar, a woman supposedly stood up by a flaky friend, or toward his associates. The problem was, at least according to the suspicions of the federal government, Des ran an intricate business, an arm of the Italian Camorra, believed to be more ambitious and more ruthless than the Cosa Nostra faction made famous by the Godfather movies. In other words, Des was also the old kind of mafia. He wasn't afraid of strong-arming, or something much more violent. No, not at all. "So, Suzanne," Des said, using the alias I'd given him, "where to from here?" I laughed, looked at my watch. "It's almost midnight. I'd say home is where I'm going from here." "And where is home?" "Old Town," I answered vaguely. I really did live in Old Town. When Mayburn first taught me to assume a cover name in order to conduct surveillance, he'd told me to always blend in some reality, some truth that couldn't be easily tied to your real life, or otherwise you'd forget or confuse yourself, and you could land in some very real trouble. The blending of such truths hadn't exactly helped. My occasional moonlighting gig for Mayburn had gotten me into more than a little trouble, but I hadn't been able to turn him down this time. "I need a favor, Izzy," he'd said earlier that night. "I want you to hang out at Gibson's. Act like you're meeting a friend at the bar. Act like the friend canceled on you. Des Romano is always there on Sunday. Throw that red hair over your shoulder and give him the famous Izzy McNeil smile. Talk to him. See if he says anything about Michael DeSanto." I didn't say that there was no famous Izzy McNeil smile that I knew of. I didn't point out all the things that could go wrong with this little favor. Instead, I agreed rather quickly. Not because I needed the money, which I did, but because Mayburn was in love. The first time I'd witnessed such a thing. And yet it appeared he was about to lose his beloved to Michael DeSanto, a banker we'd helped put in jail for laundering money for the mob. Correction, laundering money for Des Romano. "My car is outside," Des said. "Let me give you a lift." "That's all right. I'm a taxi kind of girl." I pointed out the window, where a few yellow cabs and checkers floated by. "I won't have a problem, but thank you for dinner." I waved at the table, toward the bottles of wine and grappa and the desserts in which we'd barely made a dent.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.